MS-13 gang members who they knew that they were in jail, and they were told it was policy not to inform ICE that they were in a holding cell.
When ICE did that giant sweep in Aurora a couple weeks ago, it actually was a failure because they got a heads up that there was going to be a roundup soon. A lot of them left. So
yeah, the whistleblower.
So right now it appears that they're just going to go underground. They're going to go to ground and just kind of see if they wait it out. But yeah, eventually, that's the concern, especially with leaks, right? That they might want to do like a last stand type situation. And again, this is, I mean, it's hard to truly like game it out because it's so unpredictable. But I think, and that's why. But then that's why it's funny when leading up to Trump getting back into office, you had people saying, the sanctuary city saying, no, we're gonna fight back. We're not gonna allow this. And like Denver's mayor had literally said he's gonna use the police to stop them at the county line. But then as soon as like, okay, well then you're gonna lose your funding, and then they start singing a different tune. So at a minimum, at a minimum, they're gonna just not help. They're not gonna help. They're not gonna Florida, my home state. They just passed a law requiring a certain number of officers within police forces to be ready to be assigned to help ICE, and really that. Obviously, the federal government has vast resources. Obviously, it has the ability to carry out a lot of removals. But in order to really reach numbers that people really want to see, it's gonna have to fall on the states too to actually do more than just not get in the way. They actually have to go out and help because they do have the local intel. They do know their communities better. But obviously, not every single state is going to do that, right? I can see Texas doing that and other red states, but it's gonna take more than the federal government to reach those numbers.
Yeah, I have a friend who was a prosecutor in a county surrounding DC in one of these sanctuary counties, and it's just he was infuriated. He originally was like came into that job coming from the left, and he immediately changed his perspective when he saw these MS-13 gang members who they knew that they were in jail, and they were told it was policy not to inform ICE that they were in a holding cell. And so the MS-13 dudes would then get let back out into the streets without federal charges, without ICE coming in, and they would be like laughing at the prosecutors being like, oh yeah, see, they let me right back out. So that's obviously gonna, I think if you use my buddy as a proxy, he went from being a lefty to changing his views completely because he was like, this is completely insane. So you can only have that insanity persist for so long before normal people are just like, yo, this is absolutely wild.
I agree with you, but doesn't that take the experience? And when I say the experience, I don't know that the average person that would go ahead and say, oh, get on the internet and say, oh, this is messed up. Yeah. They don't experience, they don't see that. They don't have the actual, realistic experience of it. To them, it's just, it's just another anecdote, isn't it?
Yeah, it's your typical lefty who's like, they just do it because it's virtuous. And that goes back into the peer pressure associated with BLM. With the immigration issue, unless you've been down to the border and you've seen the situation down there, it wasn't until they started arriving by the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands in all of these left-wing cities. I think my favorite article of the last 4 years, it was a New York Post article about all of these Williamsburg residents in New York, which is in Brooklyn. It's like more expensive than Manhattan now. They were infuriated because their dog park was being used for to house these migrants. And so it wasn't until that finally happened, once they were actually in their backyard, that they were like, wait a second. So I do think that the issue has gotten so bad where average people are like, okay, well, maybe virtue, it's a little bit different when actually the pragmatic reality is that your own city is getting destroyed by a massive flood of people who, just want to stay in the Roosevelt Hotel.
There was a video that was circulating a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was an AJ Plus podcast from where this interview was taking place, and this woman, she was saying that Mexico can't absorb all those deportees. They can't absorb all those millions of people that are coming back all of a sudden. I was thinking, whoa,
you don't say.
Like, really? Like that's interesting. That thank you. Thank you for making that point. And that's why it's also funny because you had like Mexico's president as well referring to the Mexicans that are in the United States as Mexicans, right? They just view them as
Senorita Scheinbaum.
Right. Yeah. So it's just funny that, but they're Mexicans, but we want to keep them in the United States, and obviously I think that's just because of the remittances. Mexico's economy is like there's a lot of money in that too. So that's why there's so much pushback. It's not just because Trump is being racist.
Well, yeah, I mean every country that has a sizable population or a sizable plurality of their population in the United States working and sending American dollars back, that's a significant economic incentive, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually the bill that the Florida State House passed, that it didn't. The bill that Governor DeSantis initially proposed, it actually it wasn't a tax on remittances. It was requiring people who were sending remittances back to provide proof of U.S. citizenship at these financial institutions. It's a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, that for whatever reason, and again, I think it's because the money talks, that wasn't included in the final bill. So they're promising that they're going to address that later on down the road. But the fact that we don't even tax remittances is
24% of El Salvador in 2023. 24% of El Salvador's GDP was remittances. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But you want to fund all your little pet projects. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Amman, Jordan, in the Middle East. 1/6 of their GDP is foreign aid from the United States. Yeah. So, I mean, which is not saying much. It's not like they have a crazy big GDP, but it's like $600 million a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, aside from Afghanistan and now Ukraine, the number one recipient of military aid from the United States was Israel, and number two was Egypt. It was like $3 billion and $2 billion. So it's crazy that you would have a conflict over there, and not only are we funding one side, we're funding both sides.
And to play both, so we come out on top.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean,
or American citizens just end up on the bottom.
Yeah, it's typical that the U.S. does, funds both sides of whatever conflict.
Yeah, because I'm getting the emails. You gotta file your taxes, and I don't really want to actually. I even more so. I don't really want to.
Really?
I don't want to do TurboTax right now, or H&R Block, or whatever.
Yeah, I imagine the average American, right now they're hoping for some kind of movement on taxes because with all the talk of the IRS. But that's another topic for another time. So the riot season that we're looking at this year, it kind of feels like. Well, I mean, clearly you're hoping for something interesting, huh?
I'm bored, man. I've been bored for a while.
I just pretend to be in retirement.
Yeah, this guy. Every time I post about it, he goes, "Oh, I'm retired." It's like, stop freaking lying.
It's like Tom Brady,
You're retired because it's the winter. Yeah. It's just like it's like football.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was cold covering the inauguration protest, and that was like absolute, and nothing happened on that, and so it was kind of.
Yeah, I mean, well, that
was surprising. I was surprised by that.
Well, it was really cold.
Yeah,
it was really cold. Like I know people were talking about security with Trump, and I think that had something to do with it, but also it was really cold.
It was cold. It was the coldest it's been in D.C. since 1988. Is what I saw.
Right. Yeah, because it was the wind chill too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people were making a whole big deal about it because they were like, "Oh, look at Donald Trump is weak and he's a pussy, and we're gonna go ahead and talk about him because it's cold out and blah blah blah."
But it's like I don't see you out there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Obama's first one was pretty cold. I was there. It was actually
because you were lib.
I ended up
because you were open change, and it's like okay.
Yeah, open change, folks. And nope, nothing changed.
No.
But I was at Obama's first inauguration, and it was definitely cold, but nobody shot Obama in the ear months
to
before.
That, yeah.
And Reagan was the last time that it was inside, and that was a couple of years after Reagan's assassination attempt.
Yeah.
So even if it were inside for those reasons, I would say that that's justified.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, "Oh, he's a wuss." It's like, well, same thing with the Bible. So St. John's Church that whole weekend.
Oh yeah.
Before that, like all of the left-wing media, CNN, were saying, "Oh, Trump is such a wuss for going into the bunker," and it's like the Secret Service were up on the roof, and I've talked to guys who were there that night, and they were like ready for them to overrun the front lawn, and if that had to happen, then there would have been
A lot of people that took rounds.
Yes, exactly.
Because the Secret Service, if
people don't realize how close that was to happening.
Yeah.
I mean, the Secret Service was overwhelmed. They're getting bricks thrown. There were dozens of them that were injured. And it's like, isn't that warranted to put the president into the bunker? Like, isn't that what,
I mean, at that point, the president doesn't have a choice.
Yeah,
there is a point,
exactly.
There is a level, a certain threshold that once it's met, the president doesn't get to tell Secret Service what to do anymore. The Secret Service is like, no, Mr. President, we're running the show right now until the situation is under control again. But the leftist media isn't going to ever. I mean, that was their.
I mean, that was an insurrection.
Yeah, clearly.
That was an attempt.
Well, I would argue that neither of them were insurrection.
Well, no, I know, but just using the crying Adam Kinzinger's emotional outburst. Because you can say the same thing about the Portland courthouse, because it's a rebellion against the federal government. Obviously not the Capitol building, but it's still federal government property with federal agents.
And how many nights was the Portland courthouse under siege? And siege is legitimate. They were
over 100.
Yeah, it was for a while, and they continued, because once they were done with the federal courthouse, they went back to targeting the Portland police precincts.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it was it went for very long.
I mean, it was crazy, like straight up garbage fires every single night. I'd be like,
well, that's just Portland.
I'd be like sitting around a garbage fire, like talking to these dudes, like trying to get some semblance of why they were out there. And it's like literally we're right in front of the Portland courthouse, on the street in front of it, and we're around a garbage. I definitely lost years off my life breathing in whatever plastic was burning. And I'm not even kidding you. There was a moment where in the plaza, so they would use saws, like actual metal saws, saw open the fence.
Yeah.
They'd rip the fence open, and they go into the plaza and light a garbage fire. And it's like the first night that I was there, a dude threw a plastic fan into the flame, and I was like, I guess that's a new definition of fanning the flames there.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.